Hang in
Dude,
there. It is.
that's Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Smylie Show. We have a fantastic guest that most of you recognize and love. It's Joel Dahmen. And Joel, thank you for joining first and foremost. And Charlie Hulme is going to join us here at the beginning of this episode to talk a little bit about y'all's stories when it comes to testicular cancer. So, Charlie, take it away, brother.
Yeah, what a nice and abrupt way to just get right into this interview, Joel.
Let's just hop right in,
Rip the
dude.
Band-Aid off.
Get right into testicular cancer.
Sure.
Yeah, might as well. Yeah, we had a long conversation about this actually a couple of years ago, Joel, at the RBC Heritage, and it's interesting. First of all, we are golf's #1 testicular cancer pod. We've had the same discussion with Lance Armstrong.
Okay.
Now we got you and I talking about it. We were very similar timelines. You were diagnosed March 2011 as a 23-year-old. I was July 2012 as a 23-year-old. And I hope for those out there listening or watching, I don't mean to make light of what's a very serious disease, but I say that because that's how I approached my diagnosis and recovery. You know, I think at the time it was, you're 23 years old, you're making jokes about it, you're trying to get back to your work, you're trying to find some sense of normalcy. And I'm still not sure if that was healthy or not. I guess time will tell. But I think for you too, maybe at the time, a similar type of mindset of, at least what I've read, you're trying to grind, you're trying to get back out on the Canadian tour, trying to get through treatment, the chemo, that you did in very short succession there. So I guess the place I want to start is what you remember about that time in terms of diagnosis, surgery, chemo, and how you process that, and then maybe what sort of additional long-term processing you did, once you get further and further removed from all that you went through.
Yeah, I think I was very fortunate to be almost, young and naive maybe about a lot of it. I was fortunate that when you hear cancer, it's scary and it's bad, but when then they tell you pretty quickly after that you're going to be fine, that you just always think you're fine and you don't think anything of it. I was, I guess, like early stage 2 is what they kind of called it. Probably on the border of even needing chemo at the time. And with that, I never thought it was going to be this big deal. So I guess in the long run, I've talked with plenty of people, unfortunately, who have almost like PTSD with it, or they always struggle, of it, the worry of it coming back, or, am I ever going to be healthy again? Those type of things. And I think that I was just kind of young and dumb enough that it never really affected me. I just knew that I wanted to get healthy again and go play golf and hang out with my friends. And that's all that I really cared about. I didn't have a wife. I didn't have a kid. I was on the Canadian tour at the time. It wasn't like I had this great career going where I was going to lose out on that. So I kind of had nothing to lose. And I just knew like there was a timeline. I was going to be done by May, and then I was going to go to Canada in the summer. And thankfully it worked out like that for me.
It's interesting, just even hearing you talk about that and reflecting on a similar sort of thing for me. It's like I almost got 6 months out and was like, whoa, this was a very serious thing that happened that, deals with matters of masculinity and, some time down the road, if I do get married and want to have kids, what that's going to look like. And just that delayed onset processing that, was pretty heavy, I think. I also think that there's an interesting, there's another sort of backdrop of this for you, right? What you went through with your mom passing away, pancreatic cancer, and she's 46. You're in high school prior to your diagnosis. You're also part of the way you found out, that what you had was your older brother, Zach, diagnosed a couple years before you. Similar situation for me. I had a buddy who we were in Connecticut at the time moving furniture, and I'm feeling all these pains. And he's like, hey, you should probably go get that checked out. And lo and behold, quick succession, you find out you get surgery. I think that I say all that to say my dad's going through something similar now. And I think that there is a reflection on what's happening, on multiple levels, given our sort of shared history of, first and foremost, right, how blessed we are to be able to have children, right? And secondarily, just framing what is and isn't important in life. And so I wonder, do you feel like all that you've been through, have you arrived at a certain mindset on the personal and professional sides of life? And how would you describe that mindset?
It's a good question. I think a lot changes when you do have a kid. Kind of with that, like once again, I was just kind of young and dumb, but we tried for many years to have a kid, and it took us a while. And I was kind of going through that process, which is not easy and is difficult. And you realize how amazing women are going through that whole process. But it's kind of one of those like, did you think about this? And she's like, yeah, I knew this was a possibility the whole time. I knew that it might not that bit easy. We might need extra help and whatever it is. I was like, oh, I was just, like you said, I'm just kind of a dude. And I don't think about those things, I guess. But, so I guess in that sense, you're kind of still processing stuff that happened, 12, 13 years ago, which is interesting. But I think looking back on it now, you're very lucky. And unfortunately, us having gone through that is we can help other people through the process. It sounds like your dad's struggling a little bit right now. And then one of my good friends here at home is going through some difficult stuff. And, I would partner with MD Anderson for 5 years and wore the bug hat with a strike through cancer hat. So people see me as a symbol of hope out there on the golf course. And they're, someone that like, I went through the same thing that a lot of other people have went through. And so they can look for me, for a little bit of hope and joy out there. And, so I guess it's changed for me a bit in the way that I look at it and look at myself, and try to use it more as a positive than a negative.
And that's such a perfect segue to where I want to sort of end this section and hand it back to Smylie. Is this cancer is called commonly a young man's disease, right? So I remember in the years, talking to people about this, I had people reach out. To your point, all the time, you're a symbol of hope. People talking to you probably on a daily basis. So, and you already kind of touched on it there, but just if someone's out there right now going through this, watching this, listening to this conversation, is there like a main piece of encouragement or wisdom you want to leave those people with to take with them?
Yeah. I go back to that word hope a lot. I think if you have hope, and you don't stop dreaming and dreaming big about the future and keeping your eyes forward and your head up, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. Like, all of it is temporary, and there's great things on the other side of it. So I think it's one of those things. Like, I was fortunate enough that my journey of cancer was rather easy compared to others. But it, so I can't completely speak, people that are going through it for months and months and years, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. And there's great things ahead, as tough as it is right now. There's always more in the future.
It's really well said. This is going to be a fun segue because Smylie's internet dropped. We got the text in the middle. Nice somber way for this internet to drop. So
perfect. We broke it. We broke his internet. Smylie wasn't ready.
Hello, Smylie.
God, man, it just completely crapped out. The restart helped. Where can I transition?
We left it. Joel gave us a very uplifting message of hope.
Got it.
For everyone out there going through it. So you can just take it out on that little piece there. And I'll let you two boys rip it to the end of the interview.
Well, tell you what, Joel, you know who needs hope? Dads at around 2 years old. You and I both have kids. You have a son named Riggs. I have a daughter named Anna Carter. Remind me when Riggs was born. I was trying to find this on the internet. I think I remember it was right around the same time. Anna Carter was born January 16th, 2 years ago.
We are the 19th.
The 19th.
So 3 days apart. Yeah. So we're going through all the same stuff at the same time right now.
All right. So give me just some the overall. What's Riggs got going on? Are we into trucks? Are we into just exploring everything? Are we fearless? I imagine.
Yeah, definitely trains, planes, cars. Big time on trains.
Yeah.
He got a bunch of Hot Wheels for Christmas, so he's into that. He's got too many cars. It's one of those things you step on and you kick around, and it's not great. He's got a little tiny like Strider bike that he's ripping around on right now that he's pretty into. And occasionally, he was more into balls when he was younger. Now it's not as often, but every now and then he'll swing a plastic golf club or he'll shoot a basketball hoop. But he's really big into cars and trains and planes.
I love that.
Just being a 2-year-old that has opinions and likes to not do what you want him to do.
So a birthday 2 to 3 weeks after Christmas, it's kind of a weird time. You get all these presents for him for Christmas, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, we're celebrating birthday. Do you like that, or do you kind of hate it?
So I'm not a huge present guy. Like, I think our family, we always had everything we ever wanted growing up. I mean, we weren't the biggest house on the block, but we just didn't I don't remember having everything I ever wanted, but don't remember a ton of presents. So I'm just not a big present guy per se.
Yeah.
And,
hey.
I don't, he gets whatever he wants anyway. We walk through Target or we go through a store or whatever it is, he gets whatever he wants. So I don't, and he's not quite old enough to really understand like Christmas yet. His Christmas morning, he opened up a big present. We got him a remote control car that you like can sit in, like one of those ones, a 2-seater. And he just hopped in the box of it. So, and he's like, "Dad, pull me around in the box." I'm like, "All right." So there's a car over here that goes around, or you can play in the box. So that's kind of where we're at with the whole thing. But everyone else buys him so much stuff that I think, fortunately, that we were on the road for his birthday, and he got so much crap for Christmas that everyone was kind of done with birthday presents by that time. So I think it'll be a great thing for him when he gets a little bit older. And everyone, then you have Christmas, then you have a birthday party whenever it comes over. But for now, I think we're mostly on the Christmas for him.
Yeah, that's right. And how often do you bring the family out on the road? Is it pretty consistent, or do y'all try to kind of break it up a bit?
Pretty consistent. So my wife's a baller, as most wives are, but she's packs everything and travels. And she took him out at 7 weeks. She flew across country by herself when he was 7 weeks old to the Players Championship, and we haven't looked back. They come to almost everything.
Great.
West Coast is easy for us to drive, and then they won't go to Mexico. So I'm playing 7 in a row coming up. So they'll skip the first 2, and then they'll be on the road for the last 5. I don't know if they're going to make it all 5 weeks. That's a long time on the road for all of us to be on the road. So we'll see how that kind of works out. But yeah, for the most part, they're on the road quite a bit. Obviously, my wife has her favorite spots, and she's not going to miss those. But I just do better with them on the road. My wife and I traveled pre-kids. She was out on the road, and I think it's great for kids. They learn a lot, meet new people, and the daycare situation on tour is great.
Yeah, well, explain that. A lot of people probably don't even know what that looks like. Everybody's probably familiar with how their daycare works at home, but PGA Tour daycare is, interesting, right? Because it works the weekends.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's probably the best part of the PGA Tour, I would say. And it's so nice. So Wednesday to Sunday, tour school, daycare, whatever you call it, at 8 weeks, they can start going. I think it's 5 or 6 hours a day, Wednesday through Sunday. You have to make the cut to drop off your kid.
What?
So you can't just drop off your kid Saturday, Sunday if you're not playing.
But what if you're practicing? I don't know. Do you feel like that's right?
I think it's an interesting punishment. If you're coming down the end and you're trying to make a cut, you really want to make the cut so there's daycare as much as there is for anything else, which is a very different, what your motivation is very different in that sense. But yeah, it's just great. And the tour school, there's probably 6 to 8 gals who travel full time. They switch off different rooms and the ages, but they become like family out there really to us. And it's really special. And I don't think we would never travel as much if we didn't have that. That's for sure.
A lot of times I'll just Google a person's name, whether it's following in their group or I'm having them on the podcast. So of course I did that with you, Joel, and it said this article pops up and it says 25 things you didn't know about Joel Dahmen. I was like, perfect. I'll click this and see what I didn't know about Joel that I didn't already know. And one of the bullet points was Joel really likes to cook and he really likes to read. And I wanted to hear if that was true or not.
I like to grill. I have a Traeger, I have a Green Egg, I have a Blackstone.
So you have how many grills at the Dahmen house?
I have 4 grills.
Can you tell my wife this? Because we have 2 right now and I'm getting a 3rd one. And she's like, nobody has that many grills. Like, I guarantee you people have that many grills.
Do you have a Blackstone?
It is en route.
I highly recommend it. It's going to be probably end up being your favorite. I recently got my first Blackstone, and I've been. I wouldn't say like my wife is actually a great cook. Like she can make great food. I can make meat that tastes pretty good, and with the Blackstone, I throw veggies on the side, and I can make a pretty healthy, pretty solid food. It's not going to blow anyone away.
What about smash burgers? Like in hibachi, like that's kind of what comes in my brain.
The first thing I ever made on the Blackstone was a smash burger.
Sure.
And I've never had a burger that good in my life. And my wife agreed. It was just, I don't know why it was so good. Obviously, the Blackstone's great, but you know, you just get the caramelized onions on there, the meat's sitting in its own juice, and it was delicious. Kind of made our own sauce out of it, and it was very good.
Do you like smoking stuff too, like during the fall?
Yeah. So enjoy using a smoker as well. It's amazing how little I've done it since I've had the kid. I just forgot how much time it takes.
It really does. It's you know, it's a full day. You need to, like, as soon as you wake up, you know, get the egg going, then you got to grab a beer. It's a whole deal. You know what I'm talking about?
It's a whole thing. And I didn't realize how much time I was spending doing it until you have a kid and you realize, like, even if, you know, you have help around and, you know, Lana's taking care of the kid most of the day, it's still a lot of work to put 8, 10, 12 hours on a smoker and to go that route with it. So
it ain't easy. Hey, Lana, it's not easy. This is hard work.
Exactly.
You know, this is it.
I agree. To get a proper brisket or
brisket you can do for that can be an 18-hour deal.
You can do a long one, especially if you're putting it in the cooler for 3 or 4 hours to let it rest.
Yeah.
It's a whole process. So I've cooled off on that a little bit, but and the Blackstone's really taken over at this point. So I could see when the kid gets a little bit older, I could get back into that. But right now, Blackstone, and if every now and then you need a flame, so I'll go Blackstone, and then I'll finish it with some flame sometimes, which is great.
Love that. We actually did steaks the other night. Did a sous vide for the first time and finished it on the egg. Basically, like a reverse sear is kind of what they call it. And it was fantastic.
Yep. That is a very easy way to make sure you get it done correctly. The sous vide. We have one. I haven't really used it much for the meat, but it is nice to get a big flame going on there and char the outside of it and know that you're not completely frying the whole thing, for sure.
Well, all right. What about reading? Is that something that's
not a big reader?
Okay. All right. So just so you know, when you go on this Joel Dahmen 25 things you didn't know about him, there's only 24 and a half because not a big reader.
Yeah. I would say, you know, well, my reading really just turned into podcasts and that type of thing. So I can get a lot more information from podcasts now.
You got any good recs?
I bounced through a couple different things. I'm kind of a big into the war stories one. I just listened. I drove home 2 days ago from wherever I was. Joe Rogan's always interesting, right? Pinning on his guest. But the one that I've been is called Hazard Ground. And it's a podcast done by, former military, but it's basically hundreds of episodes about war stories over in Afghanistan and stuff. And that's pretty badass.
Okay. All right.
I'm also
add it to the list.
Kind of a golf dork. So if you have a popular guest on or someone I think will be interesting, I'll listen. No Laying Up is on there.
Love it.
I like listening to Grave and Sleaze. They're always great with very, like their Mike Commodore podcasts are just
it's my favorite.
Really incredible. I can listen to multiple times. So
Gommy's great, man.
I like, between something to do with some type of crazy war stuff or some other athlete talking about, you know,
that sounds
how they
it sounds like how golfers are wired, you know, like this is an easy, great transition, right? Because we golfers, we're a little sick in the head and it's not easy.
Yes.
And it's not easy to be a professional golfer. And I was actually curious. I was kind of setting my own over-under of seasons played on the PGA Tour for Joel Dahmen before I went and guessed to see what that number was. And I was like, I feel like 5's low, 6 feels right, 7 feels like too much, and you're entering your 8th year.
You're 9 now.
9. So I didn't even – it's that first year. So you only had like 13 or 14 events. Was that just bad status?
I think I snuck in 15 the rookie year and lost my card, got it back.
You only got that many starts your – holy mackerel. I just figured it was just like a random
Yeah, so my fourth event of the year was Puerto Rico.
Oh my gosh!
No, I'm sorry, it was Pebble Beach. My fifth one was Puerto Rico, which is at the time was after the Masters.
Oh my gosh!
So I played Sanderson and Sea Island in the fall. I got 2 in the fall, and then I got in Palm Springs, last man in the field in Palm Springs, and got in Pebble. And
Holy moly!
So that was a very difficult rookie year, obviously. Not getting starts, not playing well. And then got it back, and it's been a nice 7-8 year run out here now.
All right, well, we're in year 9. Excuse me.
Yes.
Well, that's impressive in its own right. It's not easy to keep your card year after year. So why don't we just talk a little bit about how the new structure of the PGA Tour? You know, we're at 125, we're down to 100, and what the PGA Tour has said is that it's going to help speed up play. It's going to help that Korn Ferry Tour category, which is what we just talked about, coming from that rookie category, how difficult it is to get into events. Do you feel like these changes will actually help that category? Do you actually think it'll be more competitive for guys to get starts? How do you kind of feel about that?
I think it's two-sided for me. Last year, obviously, finished 124. In the fall had to have a nice fall there. So years prior, though, I've never finished outside the top 100. So
Yeah.
It's been a nice run for me in that sense, and nothing I've ever really had to worry about. But at the same time, competition is getting better. Kids are getting younger, hitting the ball further, and they all want my job. So competition is as good as it's ever been on the tour. I would say as deep as it's ever been. With that being said, so now we're cutting cards. We're cutting 25 spots down to 100 in hopes of getting the guys off the Korn Ferry more starts. I do agree. If you have a tour card, you should get starts.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really difficult for those guys at the bottom of that category. But I want to get them more starts, but I don't want them to take my job. So I don't know exactly how I feel during that whole thing. So the simple answer is play better, and you don't have to worry about it.
Sure. Well, what about signature events though? When it comes to this week, right? You know, for instance, you just finished top 10 the week before. Typically, that always gets you into the next week in the old PGA Tour model. But now that doesn't get you into the next week. All it does is, vault you up the FedEx Cup points list in hopes that, hey, maybe the swing 5 or the next 10, whenever that gets going, that you slide into that. Is that kind of frustrating for you as a player who's consistently making a lot of cuts? You're, like you just said, you're a top 100 every single year on the FedEx Cup, but it kind of puts you in a weird spot. It's like, do I need to aim higher? Like when I get up there to put more pressure to try to vault up, it's a weird place to be. It
is. It's certainly. I don't think there's any reason signature events can't be 120 players. The way that Colonial is, back the way that Bay Hill was back in the day, they had their invites, Nicholas event, they're great events, and there's no reason that you can't have 120 players in those fields. I understand.
Yeah.
Pace of play is what they're trying to say. I mean, don't give me that crap. I mean, yeah, is golf too slow? Yes. Is it a problem? Yes, but it's not going to be fixed by having less players necessarily. I think it's a player problem. So in that sense, yeah, I think that there's too many good players. There's too many. I don't think there's any reason you can't have 120 guys in signature events. And I mean, you can't tell me having less players in the field is going to make it more competitive. Yes, you're going to have all the top 70 of the best in the world, but all you have to do is look at almost every leaderboard, and you're going to have someone
play good
outside of there who's going to be around.
Yeah.
No one ever heard of Sam Stevens probably until last week down at Torrey when he plays a great Sunday and he almost wins. But just another great player on the PGA Tour you're going to hear a lot of for a long time. I think if you go back to Nick Taylor 2 years ago, he was in the final group with Scotty and John Rahm, and he takes them down to the last hole.
Yep.
That's
what TV loves. David Goliath, man.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I'm if I'm top 50 in the world, I might want to close shop too. I wouldn't want anyone coming in and taking my cookies either. But you can't tell me that having 20 guys is worse than 70 guys. It just doesn't make sense.
And the point structure too, like, does that kind of piss you off too? Like, what
a little bit.
What a 10th place is at San Diego versus what a
Yeah.
10th place is at Pebble Beach the following week.
Yeah. And certainly, like, the field is more difficult at, I would say, you have all the top players, but I think.
But do you feel like the numbers change? Does that make sense? Like, do you feel like the leaderboard, as far as take away the names, do you feel like the numbers would be the same?
I do. I think the numbers would be same almost every week. You would have more guys between 10th and 30th. You'd have more guys packed in there, but the numbers aren't going to change. And it doesn't matter what week it is. Like, even if you're playing opposite field events, like, that winning score is still going to be the winning score no matter who you put in that field. And it's just to win on the PGA Tour, to finish top 5, top 10 is always going to be about the same quality of golf. There's just going to be a few more guys there. The point structure is difficult. If you're not in those events, like the one I had, my best event last year was probably T11 or T12 at the Players, and that got me a pile of points.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I probably had other better weeks. I just, when you get the point structure like that, and you have guys playing however 8 of them or something like that,
Yeah,
it's pretty tough for guys to move in and out of it from there. I think there was only like 3 guys finished outside the top 70 who were in signature events last year. That's not a whole lot of moving parts.
no, it isn't. And thank goodness for Maverick McNeely actually presenting the
Right.
correct points distribution list
Sure.
of some examples and finally getting that changed. But I think that, for you, Joel, I think for the most part, if you ask any PGA Tour player, they all love playing with you. They love you as a person. I always felt that way when I was out on the PGA Tour. And I think when the Netflix doc came out, when we were trying to learn about players that we didn't already know about, I think, Joel, you fit the category perfect. Your personality, people realize what type of person you are, the human you are, and how difficult professional golf is. And it was interesting too, because that prior fall, I was noticing, I was like, man, this guy's playing incredible golf. And then right around when that Netflix documentary came out, I noticed just kind of a dip in form. And I was curious too, like, when this is going on, as somebody, I wouldn't compare myself going on spring break and around the Masters and like suddenly nobody cared about how I played before I, did all these things, had some success at the Masters and went on this trip. And now everybody's like, all right, well, let's cheer for this guy. Let's see how he plays. And then I suddenly found that I put more pressure on myself to play well, even though, I've always been competitive and my expectations have always been high. I'm never not going to prepare. But still, I look back on that now and think, man, that's kind of an interesting spotlight to be put in that maybe I wasn't expecting. And I'm curious if you went through something similar when the Netflix thing came out and all of a sudden, hey, Joel Dahmen's like, let's put him on the same tier as like, I want to watch Joel just as much as I want to watch Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah, I would say I was very unprepared for it. Netflix kind of leading up to, it came out in like mid-February, I believe.
Right around Phoenix, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think it was actually LA week, so the week after.
Yep.
And it was, they told me it was going to be big. And I'm like, yeah, you're supposed to say that you're the Netflix crew. You're not going to say your show sucks. So, but I did not realize to the level that it was going to take Gino and I to new heights. And so there's a lot of positives to that, right? I mean, you get bigger sponsorship dollars, you meet more people, there's more opportunities. There's a lot of great things with that. There's also expectations, and now there's eyeballs on you at all times. So now I'm playing in featured groups. People are paying attention to what I'm shooting. Social media is getting more. Off-course obligations are more.
Yeah.
So my timing of what I used to kind of do whatever I wanted to each week, and now I'm scheduling all sorts of things. And I happen to have a kid 3 weeks prior to Netflix coming out.
So your brain's already like SpaghettiOs, right?
Right, exactly. So I'm trying to deal with being a new father on the road, trying to balance work and home life. I was never the biggest practicer of all time.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where the excuse to staying home and not practicing or not being out on the golf course was being a dad.
Yeah.
That's an easy one. My wife sat me down after a few months of doing that. She's like, look, if you don't go play golf and you don't get better in practice, we don't get to have the life that we have. And you can't support our kid for the next 18 years if you're not practicing. So we figured that one out pretty quick. But I would say being under a spotlight that I never thought I'd be famous for a TV show. I was hoping I'd be famous for winning golf tournaments. So in that sense, it's very different. And after almost 2 years, I've gotten better at handling it. But at times I still wish I could crawl in a hole, hide under a rock, those type of things. Now, that's just not, that's not going to happen. So you kind of have to embrace the whole thing. And I've been very lucky that my support has been 99% positive, maybe 98% now. And that's been very lucky. I'd rather people root for me than against me. That's for sure.
Well, you definitely could feel that support, especially from your team on the Netflix show. It just is, it's so emotional. I think Netflix did a really nice job with how you and Wyndham were in the same episode and kind of compared two different storylines of guys that are, fighting different battles. Right. And I thought that your battle was interesting because, you could tell that you're confident about what you're capable of doing on the PGA Tour, but it seemed like the noise, did it carry into like on inside the ropes a little bit too much to where, in the past you're just kind of going about your day, you're just playing golf. It's like, hey, I'm good at this, but I could see how easily your mind can just creep into like, oh gosh, I got to make this cut. You just start getting ahead of yourself. Did you feel that way at all?
Yeah, certainly. I think instead of just kind of letting the game come to me in a way, I was always, it was, you go prepare, you do your thing, and then you just kind of turn off and you just like, oh, there's my target. You hit it and you go chase the ball around. And
exactly. It's easy.
You don't short side yourself and you do the simple things. And all of a sudden you look up and you finish 15th. You're like, oh, that was another good week.
Yeah.
And then maybe expectations are higher for you. More people are eyeballs on you. You want to play better. And the harder you try, the more that you try to do things. Like I don't have the highest 4-iron in history, and I'm not hitting high draws. I'm not hitting all the, it's just kind of boring golf. I don't hit it overly far. I just hit it straight and hit it on the green and hang out. And the more I tried to play maybe outside of my own game and try to do too much is when it started going downhill, and then you try to do too much. And then you're trying to get it all back in one shot or one hole or 1 week. And then you wake up and you're struggling and you don't know how you got there. And you're like, wow, this happened really quickly. So I think my return has been just try to go back to playing really boring golf and doing what Joel does. And it's not overly flashy, but when I play well, it's good enough.
So tell me about this performance coach. I want to make sure I get his name correct. Is Chris Bertram? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Bertram. Yep.
How long have you been working with him?
So, yeah, that's the kind of funny thing about Netflix season 2 is I had actually started working because that show comes out like almost a year after they film some of that stuff, or 9 months. So it's like, man, I've so moved on past this. Like I'm so over all of this chatter and this stuff. And then it comes back out and, it's released and everyone's like, oh, Joel, you need to work with performance coach and you need to do this. And you drink too much and all this crap. I'm like, guys, I was like, so last year, like I'm so over this. So I actually started with Chris about 18 months ago now. I think it was September-ish of 2023.
Yeah.
Years are really hard, but I think that's how that works. Yeah. So he's worked with a few other players and he's helped them tremendously. Mm-hmm. He's actually the Canadian national team snowboard coach.
Oh, okay.
So he get those guys ready to do crazy stuff, flips and jumps and going down mountains. And then he can probably figure out how to hit a 7-iron, right? Like It's not that hard. So he does some very interesting things. He tries to get you into flow state is basically what it is. And, people call it the zone, people call it whatever it is. You can actually get your mind into flow state. It's not that easy. It's more difficult when you're on the 18th hole trying to win a golf tournament. But, I've just been more detail conscious and I've done the little things throughout my day to and they all add up to bigger things. So I'm just a more consistent human being, and
Right.
I think that's helped me a bit.
Well,
for sure.
Can you tell me a little bit more about this flow state? Because I'm generally curious about how one can get into that, and what were some of the things that you had to do to enter that zone, and did you have some? I guess like what would be a way to describe you before working with Chris that you had to say, all right, this was my tendency. Like I tend to be a wanderer. I tend to not focus. And what was something that you were able to do to kind of snap yourself into that?
Yeah. So number one is just almost having a pre-shot routine. Like, I do in a physical form, right? Like I take 12 and a half seconds over the ball before I hit it. Like that's just consistently what I do. It doesn't really matter if I take a practice swing or not, but physically I do the same thing. Mentally, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just out there. Obviously you have like a number and it's like Gino and I just goes, 175 yards. All right, go. But now it's like, there's a specific process that I'm doing of after I have all the numbers, calculated the wind, done all of that. Now it's like, okay, you've made your decision. Now lock in. So it's way more visualization stuff. Pre-shot. So Jason Day, when he was the best in the world, would kind of almost close his eyes and visualize behind. And I'm doing it with eyes open, but I'm doing that and visualizing the shot I want to hit, the way it feels, like how the whole thing. And that can take pinning on the shot. Sometimes it's 5 seconds, sometimes it's 10 seconds, but and that will kind of get you into this flow state where your brain settles down, your breathing settles down, your heart rate goes down, and then you can step in and let your body. My body knows how to swing a golf club; it knows what to do. I got to let the brain let my body do that. So it's just a little bit more of a process just before we hit the golf ball to visualize. Completely settled with all of our decisions that we made. And then, so there's no doubt in that.
Okay. So what if you don't see the shot or you can't feel it or just
hit it anyway?
Just hit it. Fast. All right. I like that. Cause I'm generally curious because that would be what a lot of players probably go to see performance coaches for. It's like, hey, I can get into that flow state for 60 holes, but the other 12 holes, I can't find a solution.
You're exactly right. I don't know if I have an answer for you because
Scotty seemed to figure it out.
It, right? It is. It's a great question. It is interesting. So it's like you said, it's not always there. You can't always, perfectly dial into this 10-second thing, but you also have to accept that part of it too, right? Like you can't really control your thoughts. Your mind's going to go, and it's okay to have negative thoughts. Oh, there is water over there. There is out of bounds there. That's also, you have to accept that is a thing. They can move on, and then you can refocus into what you're doing. And it's
interesting, right?
It's so much more. I've made golf so much more of a me battle, and enjoying almost competing against myself and like a mental scorecard. You hear about all these things, but when I actually focus on myself and what I'm doing, I'm pretty good at golf.
You're really good at golf.
When I start just kind of wandering around and going through the motions, sometimes all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, how am I over par right now? Like what just happened? Versus really staying in it, just with myself and competing against myself, really.
Well, I think the most interesting that I read, and you said this last week in your interviews with, I believe it was with Amanda, just talking about the Navy SEAL training that you did with Chris. And I know you've talked about it. And for the people that haven't heard about it, can you talk a little bit about what that training was like? And also, I thought it was interesting. You said it's made me mentally tougher. And I think a lot of people are scared to be mentally tougher. They don't know how to be mentally tougher. But I guarantee you, if you have to be put through any sort of difficult training that you're not comfortable with, that can take you to a place where, we're talking about these holes that, you don't see the shot. You don't have it that day. Well, this is what you needed in last fall when you're battling for a PGA Tour card for your opportunity to have somebody else not take your job. Hey, you gotta have grit. You gotta be tough. And there's no doubt you've had that in your career, but in a time in which you're on the way back up, trying to get yourself back into that consistent Joel Dahmen that's been inside the top 100 for year after year. This last fall was an important step for your, eventual, hopefully to play 10 more years on tour.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I would never have got through the fall if I didn't work with Chris and the Navy SEAL I worked with. His name is Ben Ives. I think he was in for over 20 plus years, was almost on every team that you could be on. Couldn't even imagine. I mean, he briefly mentioned a couple stories, but like, can't imagine. And that's when I thought of Navy SEALs, you think about like push-ups and pull-ups and running on the beach and, you know, the water stuff. And it's like, and that's like, I'm not going to win any push-up contests. I'm certainly not going to win any marathons here, but yeah, it's all of that is just basically what I learned is just mental. Like, so the way that Ben teaches is with the water, really. When the water's a teacher, it's like you're cold and you're uncomfortable and you're out in deep ocean water. I mean, you're not on the beach. You're like, we did multiple trips out beyond the break.
Oh,
and I don't like
scary.
oceans. I don't like sharks. That's not my favorite thing. So just being out there, and I hate cold water. I mean, I don't like, my pool's at 90 degrees and that's great for me. Like I'm not, and this, you know, when you start hanging out in 60, 65 degree water for an extended period of time, you just get more comfortable being uncomfortable.
How long are we out in this water?
Well, so
are you treading water? Do you have like
yeah, I'm not a great swimmer. So we went out around a pier. I mean, it probably took 15 minutes. And then just when you think you're done with something, there's always another layer. And there's a buoy out there that was, I don't know, a couple 100 yards out. So then you're out swimming in there. And then there's some cold water plunging, get in the cold tub, hot tub, cold tub for multiple minutes. Our last run that we did in the cold plunge was 38 degrees.
Oh my gosh. That's like frostbite for me.
So it's cold, but at the same time, you're using your mind the whole time. And he's teaching, like you're just being more comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you realize you can control your breathing. You can control your thoughts. You can control your thoughts enough to overcome being really cold, basically. And I was, and I did things that week that were more difficult than I've done maybe ever. We went down to their pool, their training ground in Coronado, and it's a 20-foot pool, 20 feet deep all the way around. And it's just this huge square. And the first thing we did is we jumped off like the skywalk. And I don't like heights. And Gino goes first. And he just steps off. And I know he hates heights. And you just do it. You're 15, 20 feet in the air. And you just do it because you have to. And then you realize it's not that bad. Like, so those, and then diving down at 20 feet, like the most I'd ever probably been down is 10 feet when I was 12 years old, diving in the pool.
Your ears are popping and everything, right?
Yeah. So doubling that to 20 feet that was no joke. It took a while to get over that fear. And you realize your body has a lot more, you can do hard things. Like he's like, you're never going to drown. You have so much air in there you don't know about. You'll be fine down there. So once you figure out that you are fine, you cruise down there and you can swim underwater for a while at 20 feet. And then you come up and you're underwater for 30, 40 seconds. And you're like, I never thought I could do that.
Wow.
And so
how were you able to change the depths? Like, did you pop your ears halfway?
Yeah. So there's two ways of going about it. But if you go down feet first, at about 10 feet, there's a line on the wall, which helps. So about 10 feet, you blow out through your nose and it'll pop your ears. And then again, you have to do it at 20 feet.
Then you're good.
The first day I struggled and I was just going down head first and I was trying to pop, but also swim versus just sinking. And that gets a little more difficult. So I definitely had water in my ears and, I wasn't as good as he was at it, obviously, but, you kind of learn to do some of the tricks of the trade. So you don't feel like your head's going to explode. I
mean, were you just dying last week? Did you feel like you had to go out in the ocean just outside of Torrey's? Like, man, I need to be out there just kind of cruising around doing some work. I mean, are you able to take this cold water therapy or any Navy SEAL training with you on the road? Or you feel like this is like a tune up every year now, maybe?
Yeah, I have, my pool's been cold enough now here in Arizona that I've taken a few dips in there, but it's only like 60 degrees. So it's more of just it'll sting you for a little bit, but it's also to know that you kind of still have it. I took my kid to we stayed in Del Mar last week and we did a swim run from Del Mar to Solano Beach, run for 8 minutes, swim for 8, run for 8, swim. Ended up being swimming for like 20 for me because I was so darn slow in the water. But went down to Dog Beach and had my wife and kid there. And I looked and I'm like, Lana, can you believe that I got in that ocean and I ran that way past those cliffs? And she's like, I just still can't fathom that. Like, that's just not who I am. But a little bit of that, yeah, you're pretty proud of those situations. And it was nice to return to that area. I definitely had good vibes last week. That was the first time I'd been back since working with Ben and Chris there. So certainly a little bit to that for sure.
Man, lots to be excited about. And I might need to do my own little Navy SEAL training. Maybe Charlie and I can go out and test the waters, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to try. But it's interesting I think a lot of, I would say, performance coaches or mental coaches that I've worked with always talk about, on the PGA Tour, how being uncomfortable in uncomfortable situations and trying to find a way to be comfortable. And every time they say that, I'm like, how? Every time I get into that situation, it's like I can't feel my legs as much. My mind, I can't control my thoughts. And that's where, being out on the ground over the last couple of years, Joel, and I watch, for instance, a guy like Scotty or a guy like Xander, it seems like they never have those lapses of concentration or just the look aheads that I feel like everybody else deals with. Do you feel that with like top players at all? Or do you just think they're just wired differently?
Yeah, I know that they've put a lot of work into all of their game, physical and mental side. And, but the other way to get more comfortable being uncomfortable is doing it more often. Yeah. So at some point, Scotty's probably sleeping pretty soundly last year on Saturday night leads. Like, most people, like if I'm having one, it's going to be a tough night of sleeping. You're not going to eat a big breakfast. You're going to be all of those things. You start doing it that 9th or 10th time, you're probably going to be slightly more comfortable. Not to say he's not nervous and doesn't have, some fear and anxiety like we all do when we're trying to win a golf tournament. But the more you do those things, the easier they get. So, but in the same, like there's people, you kind of either have it or don't. And you can look at the history of golf who do that. And, maybe it took Xander a little bit longer than we all thought it was to win a couple majors, but it's not surprising when he closed one out at PGA that just, the 2 more down the road, he wins it again, with a great Sunday. So it's not completely shocking. Obviously they're the best in the world for multiple reasons, mostly because they can hit a golf ball and putt it better than most of us. So, but also it's really cool. I love watching that stuff. Like I'm a golf fan. Sometimes it's almost more fun to watch a guy try to win for the first time or try to win for the first time in a long time and just see how they handle that. And some people handle it better than others. And there's some people who feel like they're having a heart attack on every hole. And, I think like Peter Malnati winning at Valspar, like he's not the straightest golfer. He struggles at times like we all do, but to watch him finish on that golf course the way he did was really impressive and really cool, even though he was having a heart attack on every golf swing and wondering where that ball's going. It was very entertaining to watch, and he got it done that day, which is super cool. It's just completely different than the way that Scotty goes about it or Xander, where they just look like they're just cruising around having a grand old time. Right.
Yeah. I didn't have Malnati winning at Valspar on my bingo card last year. So to your point, it was fun to watch. But I think that whatever you do, Joel, if it's PGA Tour or one day you want to get into media, I think you'd be incredible at that. And I thought you really did a great job at the Netflix Cup that they had. It was, I believe, 4 golfers, 4 F1 drivers. What was that experience like for you? Did you feel comfortable in calling golf? Did you have fun with it?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. So it was my first time really doing it. And I thought I'd be on the ground when I originally signed up for it. So I feel like being a golfer,
it's easier being on the ground because it's like I see everything, right?
Yeah, you can see everything. You can call a golf shot that's right in front of you. And I feel like that's something that I would be decent at. And then I realized I'm in the booth. I've never seen the golf course before. And the players' ear mics went out. We struggled at a few things there, and all of a sudden, the producer Jeff's in the ear, and he's like, "Hey, we're just calling golf now. This is all you." Kay Adams, my co-host, had no idea what golf was, anything about golf. She's incredible at the NFL stuff.
She called me that week. She said, "Hey, can you tell me about golf? And can you tell me about these players?" So you were definitely on a bit of an island there. I didn't know that.
I felt like I was, but once you just start calling golf, I felt like I did okay at it. When you get in that rhythm of things, like, okay, this is what this is. So the details I did the Creator Classic a little bit as well. So I was actually on the ground for that one. At Tour Championship.
All right.
I found it way more difficult than I thought it was going to be. So shout out to you, Smylie, and the rest of the guys on the ground. The first hole, I start describing a bunker shot, and then I hear in my ears like, all right, you're done. Like, cut it off. And I was like, I'm not done describing this shot. And it's like, you have to be quick, concise, but still give them valuable insights. Where I just was out there wanting to just chit chat and tell a story.
Exactly.
And the whole deal, it's like, Joel, you got 10 seconds to say something that is meaningful to someone who's watching this. And I found that to be more difficult than I thought it was going to be.
It's funny that I thought that the on course was, the first time I did it, I thought it was like, oh, this is easy. And I always felt like it was pretty easy to me. But the more I've done it, the harder I realized that position actually is, because of the amount of time that you don't know what you have. The timing, sometimes you might have a couple seconds, sometimes you might have a minute, and you just don't know what your time is going to be. And the only valuable resource I can give you, as far as if you got to do it again, is that the more you do it, the easier it gets, because you start to figure out a rhythm of a producer and where they go. And so that's where it gets a little easier. But if you always have questions, you can always holler my way.
It's something I'm really happy that I did do it, because I was struggling with my golf game at the time. And I was like, well, you're always wondering what's next.
Yeah,
like, I still, I hope I play golf for 10 more years, but if not, you're like, maybe, well, what could I do? I can't sit around at home. So, I'm like, okay, like golf commentating, it seems like getting into it. And I'm pretty happy I did that, because I got my butt kicked by it, and it wasn't nearly as enjoyable as I thought it was. I thought I was going to have a little more fun with it. So that was also like, all right, you try this, like, you better get your butt back in gear and get it back on that golf
there
course.
You go.
Because you're
Put
not
your pep
ready.
in your step, man.
Yeah, you're not ready for that headset.
It's a grind, man. You got to put a lot of work into it. I've been lucky to shadow some of the best that do it, and they spend a lot of time at it. I know a lot of people complain about the broadcast, but CBS and the NBC guys, they put their work in. It's just, there's a lot of differing factors of why people aren't tuning into golf as much as they used to. You can throw in live, you can throw in commercials. Hopefully one day we're going to get there. And with personalities like yourself, Joel, we'll get there. And hopefully I can give you more practice with commentating. You can come and just sit and we call golf on happy hour. We can do that on a Friday one of these days.
Yeah, I got to make that happen. I think you're out all Florida swing, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, sir.
Yeah, I would love to join you on the old happy hour. It looks like you've got a nice setup there. You've done a good job transitioning into this role. And it's great that NBC kind of gave you something fun to do on a Friday. I mean, it makes total sense. And
it's great, man. Thank you.
You have some great guests on there, and I hope to be hopefully one of them soon.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll get your schedule dialed in and make it easy on you. Come out. It's easy. You sit at the monitor and we just tell stories, call golf, and have some fun with it. So I hope to have you on.
Pretty fun. That's great.
But thanks for coming on here, man. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate you diving in with Charlie on that conversation. Sorry, my internet cut out and I didn't get to hear the second half. Can't wait to listen back to it. But we hope to have you on again sometime too.
Absolutely. Thank you guys as well. You're pinged up higher on my podcast list these last few months. So
there we go. That's, you hear it, guys. Like and subscribe, folks. All right. Joel Dahmen does it, so might as well you.
I do.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
I listen to this podcast. It's really cool, and
all of our lovely fans and subscribers. But make sure you like and subscribe.
It's cool to see what you guys are doing. I know golf fans appreciate it, but we do too. So please keep it up.
For all the good people of YouTube, like and subscribe.
You guys have some good takes, so I'm happy to come on and shoot the